Thank you all for being here today. I want to talk about how the Supreme Court's ruling in McGirt versus Oklahoma is affecting our state. In July, the Supreme Court ruled that Indian reservations that cover a lot of eastern Oklahoma still exist. That changed what Oklahomans have believed for the last 113 years. In 1906, Congress let people in Oklahoma vote on becoming a state. Native Americans had an equal say in that decision. Part of the agreement to become a state was to allot land to all of its citizens. Now over 1.8 million non-tribal members call eastern Oklahoma home. That makes Oklahoma unlike any other reservation that exists in the entire country. Reservations in other states have land held in common owned by the tribe. Almost zero non-tribal members live on those reservations. What makes Oklahoma so unique is that for 113 years, the land has been bought and sold dozens of times. Think of how many times land has traded hands in Tulsa, home to 1 million people. It's grown to over 1 million people. Despite that history, after 113 years of living together and working together, the McGirt ruling means the state can't prosecute tribal citizens who commit crimes in eastern Oklahoma. The Supreme Court's ruling in the McGirt case was narrow. It's limited to just criminal jurisdiction on the Creek Nation Reservation. That ruling said Jim C. McGirt, a convicted child rapist, couldn't be prosecuted by the state of Oklahoma. He's been in prison in Oklahoma since 1997 and had never made that argument until recently. However, now other courts have ruled because of the McGirt, similar principles apply to other lands in our state. Now there are questions about how the state of Oklahoma governs 18 million acres. It's almost 40% of our state and affects all 4 million Oklahomans. Chief Justice John Roberts of the U.S. Supreme Court said, and I quote, "This decision creates significant uncertainty for any area that touches Indian territory, Indian affairs. That's anything from criminal cases to zoning, taxes, or family and environmental law." That's why on July 20th, I formed the Oklahoma Commission on Cooperative Sovereignty. The commission includes leaders from law, government, and the business community. It's chaired by Larry Nichols, co-founder of Devon Energy. You'll hear from him in a few minutes. Other members of the commission include former U.S. Senator Don Nichols, former Congressman J.C. Watts, State Senator Julie Daniels, Representative Mark Lepak, Alan Armstrong, CEO of the Williams Companies, Brent Bowling, an agricultural leader here in Oklahoma, Susie Brewster, a ranching and environmental leader here in Oklahoma, Harold Hamm, chairman of Continental Resources, and Joe Robson, chairman of RCB Bank. Here's what I asked the commission to do. Number one, evaluate how this decision would affect Oklahoma's future. Number two, make recommendations in specific areas. Number three, work with tribal leaders to develop responses that reflect the sovereign to sovereign relationship between the state of Oklahoma and the tribes. Number four, provide a way to hear from leaders from different parts of our economy, state government, local communities, and the tribes. Number five, work with my office to provide guidance to Congress. And the last point was issue a report with recommendations to the governor and to all 4 million Oklahomans. I want to thank everyone on the commission for their long hours they spent on this. And now I'd like to invite Larry Nichols to share the commission's report. Larry?
Thank you, Governor. It is indeed an honor for our group to have worked to get to where we are today, which is really the beginning of the beginning. We don't have an answers to a lot of questions because the answers are not there yet. They need to be established. McGirt upended 100 plus years of judicial prudence, jurisprudence, and we don't know what that leads to. It created uncertainty because Oklahoma 100 years ago chose to go a different way. Rather than having, as the governor described, reservations set aside exclusively for Indians, we're totally integrated. The land is privately owned. Our citizens, non-Indian and Indian, are totally integrated together throughout eastern Oklahoma, throughout Oklahoma. And so the meaning of this decision is unclear. It's clear in the narrow area of criminal, but it's unclear when you get to civil. Do we want to become two separate societies, as is more typical of reservations in the West, or do we want to remain one society? Rather than getting into the details of that and how that's solved, we decided to back up and establish what we thought were several overarching principles that could guide the discussion as we go forward. And there are 5 of them. They're in our report that we're giving to the governor today that are available to you. One is, the first principle, is that all Oklahomans should be treated equally by the law, by the government that they represent, by their commonly elected officials. Number 2, all Oklahomans should share, and one is tempted to say the burden, of paying for the common services. We all benefit from those common services. The roads are roads. They're not Indian roads and non-Indian roads. The schools, the education, the environmental protection, the criminal courts, all of that is shared by all of our citizens. So we believe all of our citizens should share in the responsibility for paying for those services. 3, the laws and regulations should apply equally to everyone. We should not have segregated schools or segregated courts and jails. The Supreme Court did away with that flawed concept of separate but equal in Chief Justice Earl Warren's famous decision in the 1950s. And in fact, the court struck down the last example of state-sponsored segregation in 1967 when they made illegal the segregated prisons in the state of Mississippi. Surely we don't want to undo that 50 to 70 years of practice in our communities. 4th, all businesses should have a level playing field. The zoning regulations, the environmental regulations, all the regulations that are appropriate to make sure businesses function as they should be common to all Oklahomans. You should not have zoning for one particular block of land be different than zoning across the street. That would create chaos and uncertainty. And the final principle, of course, is sovereignty. We all respect and worship the sovereignty of our tribes. It's part of American history. It's part of Oklahoma history. Part of our history is the history of the Indian tribes. It's part of our legacy. We've all been proud of that. The tribes are proud of that, as they should be. They have their cultural centers that celebrate their own unique cultures. And that benefits the overall fabric of all of America, all of this great state. And so those are the principles that we think should really guide where we go from here as we attempt to deal with that. The critical thing is that we come together now as soon as we can to resolve some of the uncertainty. People hate uncertainty. Businesses hate uncertainty. And if you don't know what rules are going to govern, if you don't know if you're getting ready to build a plant or drill an oil well or do any kind of commercial activity, if you don't know what the rules are, you're going to go build that plant in some other state. That will be to the detriment of everybody, to the tribes as well as the state, to the entire state. Because without those common rules, without that certainty of knowing what the rules are, we will drive business away. And that hurts the tribes and everybody the same. So coming together as expeditiously as we can to create certainty on where are the rules, where does the state sovereignty begin and the tribal sovereignty begin, that is the goal that we have as a state, and we need to solve it as soon as we can. So, Governor, I'd like to present you our first report with these principles, which we have all signed.
Thank you, Chairman.
And turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Larry, and thank you to all the commissioners. We've got a few of them on Zoom with us today. I'm grateful for the time that you invested in the service to your state, and I know on behalf of Oklahomans, we thank you for your service and all the time that you spent on this. Oklahoma, we have to find a path forward, and we have to do it together. I'm a fourth-generation Oklahoman. I'm a proud member of the Cherokee Nation. I'm proud of my heritage, both as an Oklahoman and a Cherokee. Our tribes are an important part of our state's history. As the Commission said in its report, the history of Native Americans and their tribes does not sit alongside the history of Oklahoma. It is Oklahoma history. I respect that history, and all Oklahomans do as well. As governor, I represent the members of all 39 tribes, as well as all 4 million Oklahomans. That's why one set of rules is essential to us becoming a top 10 state. We need to protect the social and economic fairness that we've all enjoyed as a state for the last 113 years. Can you imagine what would happen over the next 113 years if we had 39 different sets of rules? We work with our tribes in many ways every single day. We partner together on things like healthcare, where the Oklahoma State University Medical Department has a residency program over in Tahlequah, child welfare, transportation. The state spends millions and millions of dollars every single year on roads and bridges in eastern Oklahoma. Education, our kids all go to the same schools. The environment, and many, many more. Here's one example. In 2020, Oklahoma's unemployment department spent $144 million in benefits to tribal citizens. That's what we should do. When Oklahomans are out of work, the state steps forward and provides that much needed help. All Oklahomans deserve to have equal access to the benefits and services our state offers. That's regardless of your race, your gender, or your geography, where you live in the state. That also means we should share the responsibility to fund these services. That's only fair. The question caused by the McGirt decision has put our state at a crossroads. But where some see a major challenge, I see an opportunity. We can work together and secure our future as one Oklahoma. We can maintain our diversity, but share the vision of becoming a top 10 state. We are stronger together, and we have been for more than a century. We live together, we work together, we worship together, we drive on the same roads, our kids go to the same schools. I'm looking forward to working with our tribal leaders, our congressional delegation, the Attorney General, our district attorneys, the legislature, our municipalities, the business community, the local police and sheriffs, to bring clarity, fairness, and unity to all 4 million Oklahomans. We can find common ground, mutual interest, and a path forward when we all work together. Thank you, and we'll open it up to a few questions.
Governor, what's your position on disestablishment and the commission's position on that?
You know, the Congress is having to deal with this, and all the options are on the table. Those are tough decisions for Congress to make. I think it's important, and what we're focused on is fairness and the success of all 4 million Oklahomans. And so the Commission's report, which I agree with, is that we need one set of rules regardless of your race, your gender, your geography, or where you live in the state of Oklahoma.
Governor, why instruct this commission not including representatives from the tribe?
So I thought it was, well, first off, I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation. I set this group up, the 10 folks that we just introduced, to represent what the future looks like for the state of Oklahoma, and to present those findings to myself, the 4 million Oklahomans, and our congressional delegation. They've met with all 5 tribal leaders, And each one of those tribes has set up their own commissions with their own representation. So I wanted this to be a representation of Oklahomans thinking about what's best for the state of Oklahoma.
If we don't reach, if you guys don't reach an agreement on the tribes, do you foresee a day where the state doesn't pay for roads or schools out in eastern Oklahoma, no matter where they're paying for?
You know, I'm not going to go through all the specifics of what might transpire. The big vision here is that we can get through this. We can come together. We're seeing the uncertainty. We don't want endless litigation. We don't want to be divided as a state. We don't want to be divided to say, you've got to take care of this or you've got to take care of that. We're all one state with 4 million Oklahomans. We all live together. We work together. We go to the same schools. And so it's so important, and we can get there with that vision. And so I want to focus on one set of rules, regardless of your race, your geography, where you live, your gender, your political affiliation, associations. That's just only fair.
Governor, as you know, tomorrow's the deadline to reveal the compacting decision out of the Western District. What are you going to do?
So our attorneys are working on that. We haven't made a decision on that. That's just one compact of 50. The McGirt decision, that's totally separate than the McGirt case. The McGirt case is really about jurisdiction, and like Chairman Nichols said, the effects long-term to Oklahoma if we don't have certainty in how we govern eastern Oklahoma.
Governor, there's been a lot of people who, up until this point, said, oh, this decision in McGirt and in other subsequent decisions has no potential effect on taxes. Oh, it has no potential effect on oil and gas. Oh, it has no potential effect on this. And they were obviously not telling the truth. They have not been telling the truth the entire time. Can you lay out what the potential effect on taxation is for Mr. Nichols or anybody else on Mr. Pack? Anybody who feels they could lay out for the public what the taxation situation is?
Well, no one knows the answer to those questions. It wasn't they weren't telling the truth. I don't know who you're quoting, but no one knows the answers to those. And there are two ways to resolve that. One is through endless litigation that would take us a decade and create tremendous uncertainty in the process. Because of that uncertainty and the negative impact it would have on all businesses and all people in Oklahoma, that's not the ideal way to go. The ideal solution is, and the only way that can be done otherwise, is to have federal legislation. Our federal delegation and the Congress can pass laws doing whatever they wish to provide certainty. One way to do that is the Attorney General is pursuing with compacts with the support of some of the tribes. But cooperative agreements, which, I mean, look at the name of our commission, Cooperative Sovereignty. That is what our goal is. We've established these overall goals to guide those decisions, but cooperative agreements between the state of Oklahoma and the tribes are the way to go. But the uncertainty is, who knows?
Well, I mean, who knows except there are court precedents, right? I mean, there is a concern that you could have a tribal citizen who works on tribal within the reservation boundaries who do not have to pay state income tax because they live and work within the reservation.
Yes,
Is that correct?
and those can provide you considerable guidance. But if you consider the fact that McGirt overturned 100+ years of judicial precedents, what other precedents might a future Supreme Court overturn? So that's what adds to the uncertainty, is that this decision in McGirt changed the law that had been in existence since statehood, which makes you wonder, which can make an inquiring lawyer wonder what else might be overturned. So rather than resolving those through long litigation, cooperative sovereignty is the way to go.
Governor, how would the bad blood that's generated between the meeting compacts you could make it difficult to negotiate, these compacts, these additional compacts that we did that bring certainty to the public?
I'm really not worried about bad blood. I was elected by 4 million Oklahomans to look at every contract, and I will continue to always advocate for what's best for all 4 million Oklahomans. I think we have a great plan, and we've got a great relationship with our federal delegation, and so they have some tough decisions to make. We're laying this out for 4 million Oklahomans, what the future impact is. To speak to your point, the Tax Commission has has issued some findings that they think $200 million a year in lost tax revenue. That doesn't include the ad valorem base that may be in question. But this is the uncertainty that we're facing as a state that we're trying to avoid.
I mean, you talked about how you want to create one set of rules. Do you anticipate that set of rules, if agreed upon, will be in a series of compacts, or, how is that going to be codified?
Well, there's compacts are certainly an option. There's other things that Congress can do that they're working on behind the scenes. Compacting with each individual tribes is problematic, and then how do you enforce compacts, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to have to be some federal legislation, I think, that gives us guidance as a state. Otherwise, the things that we pointed out here in this commission, it's going to create tremendous uncertainty to the business community and really result in endless litigation. There's already stuff before the Corporation Commission right now, cases pending, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Governor, you said that the decision on this establishment obviously is up to Congress. As the governor of the state, do you have any recommendation to Congress? Do you think they should disestablish, or do you need not?
It's so early on. We're in the fact-finding process right now. The commission has just given me their report, rolling out one set of rules regardless of your race, your gender, where you live in the state of Oklahoma. We believe that's just a fairness issue to be a successful state. We have to have one set of rules to regulate Eastern Oklahoma and Western Oklahoma. So all those things are on the table for the federal delegation. Again, I can't fix this myself. That's why the commission has came together to present these findings to our friends in our federal delegation here that represents Oklahoma.
What's the next step, Governor? Meeting with tribal leaders, meeting with the congressional delegation. Where do you guys go from here? What's the next step?
So we are starting those conversations with the tribal partners around the state. We're looking at someone that can help us and kind of become part of the governor's team. I know that our senators are also having representatives that are studying this issue. We'll be getting together as soon as the election's over with our federal delegation to have a sit down. They're all, some of them are pretty busy right now between now and early November. And then we will come up with a great path forward. This is something also we want, we need the business community, I need the municipalities, we need the district attorney, we need the attorney general, we need all of Oklahoma kind of weighing in on this. I've issued an executive order asking all of my different state agencies to let me know where this impacts them, what are the impacts. I'll be sharing that with Oklahoma as well.
Lastly, we've got an election coming up. Have you taken a position on state question 814 or 805?
Yes. So in my opinion, 814 is something that should pass. So I am for 814. Basically what that is taking some of the TSET new money. It doesn't touch the corpus. There's about $1.3 billion in the corpus of TSET. The new money coming in, we'd take 75% of that and use that to fund Medicaid. So the Medicaid expansion is going to cost our state $164 million. I think that's very important that we redirect those monies to improving health outcomes for all of Oklahoma. 805, in my opinion, is the wrong way to do sentencing reform. We've got some task force with the Attorney General. The legislature set up some task force to look at sentencing reform. To put sentencing reform inside our Constitution is the wrong way to do that. It basically ties the hands of our prosecutors, our district attorneys. The one example that I share with Oklahomans is your first DUI is different than your 10th DUI. If you're a habitual drunk driver, you're eventually going to kill someone. If 805 passes, the 10th DUI and the first DUI have to be treated exactly the same. And I just don't believe that should be the case. I think most Oklahomans agree with me that we should not treat both those the same.
Governor, since Trace asked about the elections, I'm curious, are you planning to vote for President Trump this November?
Yes.
Have you endorsed any congressional candidates in particular, or do you endorse Senator Vice, or are you
Yes, I'll be voting for Stephanie Bice.
You registered here in CD5?
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.